That's it? You're done?
That's really easy.
Good evening, everybody. My gavel seems to have taken a vacation, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Curriculum Committee to order. It's the November 8th, 2021 Curriculum Committee meeting. Could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Jen, it's your show.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Feinberg. Good evening, everyone, members of the public, members of the board, Dr. Rushi, and colleagues. We are very pleased this evening to bring you some information about a screening tool that's going to help us identify students in need of social and emotional wellness supports in grades 3, 6, and 9. Here with me this evening are the social emotional wellness chairs, our school psychologist, Shakora Monroe, a middle school assistant principal, Matt Crater. Erica Harvey, who is also a middle school assistant principal, is also a co-chair of the team. She was unable to join us this evening, but I wanted to recognize her as she has been central in these efforts. Also, our pupil services director, Nicole Battistelli, is working with the team and will be sharing some information with us this evening as well. Would you, thanks, Nicole. Nicole's going to get us to the next slide. Great.
We didn't get this.
There you go. Oh,
We didn't get it.
The slide on.
so the slides are being projected behind us, so I apologize for the crook you might get in your neck.
Do they want to sit?
Or if you'd like, we can change our seats. Does anyone want to? Take a seat in the front?
I'm good.
You're all right for now?
Just sit on the table.
Yeah, okay, you're doing it.
Chair around.
Great. Whatever works for everyone. It's just like teaching in school. When the technology isn't how you expect it. Although I don't,
Sorry.
there's no issue with the.
Yeah.
No,
That's all right. Recording it, so
Great.
that's good. I feel weird that I'm still sitting here.
No, that's quite all right.
We're able to take notes.
Yes, sure.
Go for it.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for accommodating that. Briefly, before we get into the screening tool itself, I just wanted to draw the connection between this effort that we're going to talk about tonight and the district mission. As you know, it is our goal to create a community of lifelong learners. Well, this also includes ensuring that our school environment is safe and nurturing. It includes creating the conditions whereby all students have opportunities to grow and excel in areas of academics, as well as social and emotional wellness. We strive to keep the needs of our students at the forefront of our decisions, and we want to focus on the whole child. Thanks, Nicole. For those of you who may not have had the opportunity to see our strategic planning presentation from July, I'll just review a little bit of the process that we used that led to the establishment of social and emotional wellness as one of our 3 strategic goal areas. In the fall of 2019, we invited all SDHT community members to provide input into the vision of our schools and our district. As many districts do, we worked with a facilitator, Judy Wilson, to guide us through this process and to conduct much of the input gathering. As you can see here, over 4,200 surveys were completed by faculty, staff, students, community members, parents, guardians, and administrators. Our facilitator also held 3 community forums where attendees discussed topics that you see listed in this gray column here. She also conducted individual interviews and focus groups with students, including middle and high school students, as well as with recent alumna. Other interviews and focus groups included PTO leaders, our bargaining unit representatives, board members, directors, and other administrators. All of this information was gathered in order to determine what trends were evident and how they would inform our district mission and goals. During 2 days of intensive strategic planning, members of a strategic planning group that included stakeholders from all levels, all socioeconomic backgrounds, and all different years of experience in our schools and districts got together. This group learned more about the types of skills and content that our graduates will need now through 2034 and beyond. They analyzed data, reviewed the summaries of interviews and focus groups, and actually went through the survey responses themselves in order to gather trends and establish priorities. As the information was reviewed, categories emerged: teaching and learning for the future, social and emotional well-being, and diversity and inclusion. The group then divided into teams to synthesize the input that had been gathered and the research, and then developed goal statements. These goal statements were then reviewed by a whole group for feedback and revised accordingly. And this is how we came, there we go, to develop the strategic goals that you see here and about which you have received communication recently through the Haverford happenings and our strategic goal information sheets that went home. So now Mr. Crater is going to tell us a little bit more specifically about the social and emotional wellness goal that we're here to talk about tonight. Thanks, Mr. Crater.
Thank you, Ms. Saxa, and everyone else, members of the board, community. Thank you for allowing us the time tonight to talk about our social emotional goal and the screener that we're looking at. Just a little reminder, I know you've seen this in the past, but our social emotional wellness goal states: produce a community of empathetic and resilient learners with skills to socially and emotionally flourish. And we bolded and underlined the key words that came up most often in our discussions as we developed the goal. Our 3 action steps that have been incredible, and our team and our districts committed to all 3 of these action steps, but the one tonight that we are focusing on is our second action step: screen and intervene. It's research and begin implementation of the social emotional screener and specific grades to identify students who demonstrate a need for social and emotional intervention. A licensed professional counselor will be able to provide those interventions. And tonight, our goal of this presentation is to provide an update on the chosen screener and how we plan to facilitate the administration and the intervention that will occur after the students take the screener. I'll pass it off to Mrs. Monroe.
Thank you, and good evening to all the members of the board. So first, we want to review why it's important to screen and intervene. Prior to the pandemic, schools across the country, not just Haverford, has seen a rise in social emotional challenges in students across grade levels. Within this last year, students and families have been faced with unexpected change and loss, which has led to even more social and emotional difficulties. Students often do not have the understanding or skills needed to cope with these situations, and therefore we want to utilize a social emotional screener to help us identify students experiencing at-risk factors that may interfere with their learning and overall functioning. The idea is to identify the needs of our students early on, before small problems become more significant concerns. This past summer, we surveyed staff as well as parents and guardians regarding their priorities for the ESSER funds, the funds that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you can see from these pie charts, both academics and social emotional well-being were prioritized as areas of focus for the district. The area in the yellow-orange is the areas that specifies both academic and social emotional wellness as the priority. The blue area is the percentage for just social emotional wellness. Grades 3, 6, and 9 were chosen as the grades that we want to focus the screener on for this year. And those grades were chosen because they're considered transition years. So for grade 3, students become more aware of society and the world, and both social and academic expectations increase. They switch from learning to read to reading to learn, and they also take the PSSA for the first time. So this is definitely a huge developmental transition year. Grade 6 transitions to middle school, where they are given more freedom and independence. Social pressures increase, and they are trying to figure out how they fit in. Grade 9, the transition to high school, is where academic pressures increase and students are figuring out who they are and begin worrying about their futures. So the first thing that we did to begin this process of choosing a screener was to put together a team of individuals who would help us decide what would be best for our district. And that team consisted of school psychologists, teachers, and counselors from each grade level, as well as a counselor from Lakeside who helped us with data gathering. And we want to just, the names are all listed there, but we want to thank everybody who helped us in the process, who volunteered their time to really take this very seriously to figure out what would be best for Haverford. So this slide just shows what the process entailed. I'm going to go through a little bit more details as we go through each slide, but these are the steps that we took to get to our final selection. So the first step in the process was finding screeners that could be used for grades 3 through 12 that were research-based and that would really focus on identifying risk factors that impede learning and academic performance. So the 4 screeners are listed in red that were chosen, and then the factors that we considered were rater, meaning who is going to give the information, student, teacher, or parent, types of questions, format of the administration time, type of data generated, and data security, ownership, and confidentiality. So from those 4, we narrowed it down to these 2, the PASS, which stands for Pupil Attitudes to Self and School, and the SABRS and MySABRS, Social, Academic, Emotional, and Behavioral Risk Screener. And the one in yellow is the one that we have chosen to be the one that we feel is best for our district. SABRS is the one that a teacher would fill out, and MySABRS is one that a student would fill out. And in bold, we try to highlight the things that really stood out as the pros of this particular screener. So it's a short screen, meaning it doesn't take a lot of time. So there's 20 questions for the students, and it only takes about 3 minutes to actually fill out the questionnaire. Now, this is once it gets set up and they have it in front of them, it should take about 3 minutes to actually fill it out. This screener was normed across the country. You can see the other one, they screened UK students, but this one they screened across the United States for K-12 in all types of settings. Neither screener is being used in neighboring districts, but they both have different school districts that do use them. And they both are COPA and FERPA compliant. COPA is the Children's Online Protection Act, and FERPA is Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So this next slide just is a nice visual of how the questionnaire is broken down. So it's in 3 sections: social behavior, academic behavior, and emotional behavior. There are 7 questions in the social behavior section or domain. There are 6 items in the academic behavior domain, and emotional behavior has 7 items. So social behavior refers to a student's ability to understand social norms, empathize, and understand the perspective of others. Academic behavior refers to skills necessary for students to be prepared for, participate in, and benefit from academic instruction. And emotional behavior refers to students' ability to regulate internal states, adapt to change, and respond to stressful or challenging events. And I want to point out that no questions are about families or their home life. So it doesn't dig into, personal things that are going on with each individual family. One other thing that's just a bonus of the SABRS is that it also aligns with CASEL, which is the social emotional framework that our elementary counselors are currently using. And CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And that's what our elementary school counselors use when they do their guidance lessons. So this program is aligned with that. Examples of questions. So for social behavior, an example of a statement would be, I argue with others, or I am respectful. Example of an academic statement would be, I'm ready for class. It is hard to pay attention in class. An example of emotional statements would be, I am sad, I feel sad, I like to try new things. The students then rate using a Likert scale, 0 meaning almost always, 1 often, 2 sometimes, and 3 never. I will also add that for the elementary age, there's also pictures that go with the numbers, just to make it a little bit more user-friendly for younger children. And Matt's going to continue from there. Thank you.
Thank you. In an effort to be as transparent as possible with our families and communities, we want to make sure that we have a couple things that we're committed to. Parents and guardians will be informed in writing about our process, our screening process, and what occurs after that. Parents and guardians will be able to review the screener as requested. They may opt their child out of participating in the screener, and they may opt out of the interventions that occur after the screener takes place. Like Shakur said earlier, we are focusing on grades 3, 6, and 9 right now. Of course, electronic administration, we've been working with our tech team to make sure that that is our resources that the students have on their Chromebooks can support a survey. Program has an option where students can have items read aloud to them, and our goal and our plan is to have this administered in homeroom or advisory in those 3 grades. I did forget about bullet number 3, very important, roughly 15 minutes. Shakur did say that the actual survey, when they're taking, answering the questions, does only take 3 minutes. But of course, there's going to be some prep time and maybe some troubleshooting with technology, possibly. So we're banking on 15 minutes. Let's see. Directions, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to discuss what will intervention look like. And I just want to get to my slide notes here. So obviously, before any intervention will take place, we'll seek consent from parents. We have a partnership with Lakeside, and so we will have a licensed professional counselor from Lakeside Neurologic who would provide the interventions. Again, we don't want this happening during major subjects, during homeroom advisory, but there are some things that might happen during lunch, such as lunch bunch for social skills. It will occur probably 1 to 2 times a week for about 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. And the types of activities would be small group counseling, like I said, lunch bunch for social skills, peer connections, and communication that will go out. Obviously, we'd be notifying parents if we've determined that their child would benefit from intervention based on the screener. We would request permission for the child to participate in intervention, and then we would send some progress and recommendations after the end of the intervention. For next steps overall, our communication plan is that this will be part of a board report at the November 18th board meeting, and we have a contract up for proposal for My Savers. On November 22nd, we would send a notice to parents about the screener, outlining the plan for opt-outs if a parent would like to opt out. We would schedule the screening tool, and that will not happen before the week of December 6th, so we can allow enough time for opt-out information. Once the screener has been conducted, we will review the data, organize our interventions. We might have students who are grouped together, so it'll take a little time for us to get students appropriately grouped and plan for the appropriate time for interventions. And we will then intervene 6 to 12 weeks, again, likely more closely to 6 weeks. We will rescreen the groups, the students who participated in intervention in the spring to get some data points on whether or not they're scoring the same way after having intervention. We will share the outcomes of how this year went at a spring board meeting, and then we'll review the data and plan for next year. Are there any questions? Just skip it again. Oh, you guys want to go back? Go ahead.
It's a built-in brain break. You have to get up and move on, right?
Yeah. Who wants to start?
Dave had his
You,
hand up.
Susan.
Dave?
I had a few, yeah, I mean, so I had a few questions, I guess. One of them was, you mentioned that the pass, I guess, is 15 to 20 minutes and the screen area is 3 minutes. Can you just speak a bit to the differences of, I mean, that's a pretty drastic difference in time. Is there,
It's mainly just the number of questions. So the pass just has, I believe it's 50, it was, yeah. It's just the number of questions that takes a longer time for the students to complete. And just from my experience as a school psychologist who gives out lots of screeners to students when I do assessments, screeners that are long, you don't get as valid, the data isn't as valid because students start to get restless, they start to get disinterested, they just start circling anything. So quick and simple is definitely a better approach for a screener.
okay. I also was curious, could you give an example of what an intervention might be? Would it just be talk, or would it be something a bit more, you know?
Sure, it could be social skills group, so it could be a lunch bunch and the LPC would work on social skills. It could be group counseling. Again, the person's a licensed professional counselor, so she's able to make determinations on what's best for that particular group of students.
Okay.
Oh, and
I just wanted to also add, I know that art therapy is also used, and they might do role play, you know, how to deal with certain situations, what's the best way to handle, peer altercation or things like that as well.
Okay. And you mentioned at the end, a progress report would be given to parents. Would progress reports be able to be provided at a regular basis, or just be twice during the?
So you would need at least the 6 weeks to get good information to give to the parents. What the type of information we want to be able to provide is whether the students is participating, whether they actually seem to be improving, and improving would look like what their affect, how they're interacting with their peers and adults in the building, whether they're coming to school regularly, things like that. And then they'll be able to say, this is working, but we still think they need a little bit more time, or they seem to be in a good place and we don't want to take them out of, take them away from anything anymore. Or if it's more severe, is it something that we need to refer to special education? Refer to our child study teams and our MTSS to determine if special education is needed. So, there's different levels that they're looking at to see how severe the situation would be.
Gotcha. And I just have one more question, I'm sorry. So you mentioned it's going to be for grades 3, 6, and 9, and that's going to be when it's offered, and parents would be able to opt out. If a child's at a different grade level, but whether by the parent or something happens, would it be possible to opt in, if you will, if
the parent's aware of a concern, we would use our normal support systems in that situation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hi. I'm gonna take a little different tack, I think. First of all, I always speak for elementary because that's what I know. I think number one, 3, 6, and 9 are such disparate ages. And the idea that we're kind of giving them the same questions is number one, kind of a little bit, for me, I think a 9th grader looks so different than a 3rd grader. So I would really, I'd like to see how that looks. Because I feel like it's not in equal terms of how I feel about myself. I talk a lot in 3rd grade means I talk a lot. In 9th grade, it means, I'm good. So I just feel like, there's kind of a disparate age range there. The big thing that I think, and that I would like to offer as a suggestion is, if indeed we go with this and we give them out and we get names back with numbers, whatever the numbers may be, if we're going to recommend to a parent, I would feel that I would have to have a phone call to a parent. If it's Lakeshore, Lakeside, if whoever is giving the instrument, not the classroom teacher, not the principal necessarily, but whoever gives the instrument, in my opinion, should talk to the parent. And because as a parent, I want to know what the situation was like. And, you know, if my child came with all of these low numbers, I want to know about it. I don't want you to tell me that you're just going to bring him in for a little role playing. I feel really strongly about that. That these, and I think if maybe even more in 9th grade and 6th grade, I'll leave it to the experts, but I just feel like as parents, we need to know exactly why you've decided that my child. So my next question being, are we going to show them the data? Are we going to show them the instrument? Parents, before they take it. So I saw like a date, perhaps. So will we be showing parents that this is kind of what we're looking at? I know the problem being then the parents can instruct, but.
So the questions any parent can view, they would just like any other survey, or they can come in and view the questions on the screener. A lot of the questions are very basic so that it's easy to understand from 3 to 12. So, you know, I feel sad is a very basic statement that, you know, works at all.
So there'll be a different determiner, perhaps? No?
Yeah, so the way screeners are designed, the scoring changes based on the age. So like you said, the way a third grader may rate it and the way a 9th grader may rate it, it's built in based on age, on what's considered extreme and what's considered not. So like you said, a little kid may say, yes, I talk all the time, but that might be a common response, so it won't seem significant. Where for a 9th grader, it may seem more significant because it's age appropriate. So the screeners are built to adjust to age based on how the student responds. And then I think just piggybacking off a little bit off of what Nicole just said, parents will be able to get a little bit more information if their child is identified as being at risk. We wouldn't just say, okay, your child is at risk and we want to do an intervention. We definitely agree with you that there needs to be a phone call with someone that knows what's going on.
I mean, on the slide, it says 3 communications to parents, letter.
Well, those are like written communication that they will have, but absolutely conversations can be had about what, because there's different areas that the student may be at risk for. One may be more anxiety, for example, might come up high. Another one, attention maybe. So we don't want a parent to just assume like, oh my goodness, my child is at risk and it's something more severe. Some may be things that the parent is aware of and they're like, yes, absolutely, that's right on target. And then there might be things that they're not aware of. So we agree that a conversation needs to be had, yes.
My other question is it just once a year? And if you miss it in 3rd grade, what happens in 4th or 5th when you present as someone that may need a little bit of help?
So for right now, it'll be once a year. Once we get through this year, we'll see how that went and if the timing can shift to allow for it more than once a year, if these are the grade levels that we stick with after this year. But again, if somebody needed help in 4th grade, then we would go through our normal support procedures.
Okay. And my last question is, where does this data go? I think back on things like permanent records that just a few of us will remember, but I wonder, is this data going to be a part of the child's record? No. Okay. So they're doing it on computer. Anytime they're doing it on computer, I think, where's it going? You know, who's saving it? What file is it in? And my question is, where's it going? Who's saving it? What file is it in?
I didn't, on one of the slides, I don't believe I read this part, but if let's say we were to discontinue using this program and, you know, now they have all this information, in the contract, it specify that they give us all of the data that's collected so that it's not something that they're keeping, that the company is keeping, and that they would transfer it over to us in whatever method that we choose.
But we would have it.
We would have it, yes.
And where we
go at that point. I don't know.
Well, I think we have to make a decision about
what happens.
Make sure what we're doing with that data in the future. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I would hate for a buddy to go to 4th grade after having had some significant difficulties in third grade, just those difficulties, no meetings, no CET, anything like that, and then come to fourth grade, and the first thing his new teacher sees is, oh, he had this last year.
No.
That is a worry for me.
Yeah, it's an electronic system, so it's not something that would go into a file that a teacher would have access to. Only the administrators of the
Right.
system would have login for that to see the information. So it's not something that's going to be readily available for anyone.
I understand, but
Like Ames Web.
it's a question that I think that I'd like to see us think about a little bit more. It's, you know, it's just something that when we talk about kids, and we always do, because that's what we're in the business of, I don't want to have to look at things that have happened in the past and label anyone. Everybody gets a new year. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, if I may just piggyback quickly off what Susan said, I'm assuming that if the data is transferred, I'm assuming it's the contract, if data is transferred, if we choose to terminate the contract and data is transferred to us, it's a cut and paste. In other words, they give data to us, and the data that they have then goes away. They don't have the data still, do they?
I don't understand what he says.
My understanding is that they do not keep the data, they give it to us.
Okay.
Could you speak a little bit more about the social and emotional wellness, I don't know, programs or services that we have throughout our K-12, and how this is an additional, this screening tool, like, will provide an additional layer or catch to help our students?
Sure. So we have school counselors, K to 12, at the elementary level. They're providing instruction in social emotional wellness in our classrooms. There are some classes at the middle school that Matt could probably speak to. And then we additionally have school social workers that work with students who need additional support. If children are identified in special education and require additional supports, we have Lakeside counselors specific to students who require counseling as part of an IEP. We have a few things.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the really great things is that our teachers, counselors, social workers, administrators work very hard to identify students who have a need or present with a need, but we recognize that not all of our students, particularly coming back from such different experiences from last year, not all of our students will come and present with the typical things that would say to us, oh, okay, let's intervene here, let's take a look. So a screener like this will allow us, especially this year, but every year, to really make sure that we have a bit of a safety net, and that there aren't students who, you know, are sort of doing as they should, quote unquote, and not making too much noise, and then we're not recognizing that they have an additional need. So that's one of the goals, is to really add this as another layer.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, in terms of, you know, our services, this is a small component, but is more of a catch-all, kind of a, you know, that everybody in the grade who opts in will be able to be screened. In terms of the data and, you know, our understanding of whether this tool is successful, what is your hypothesis or the interpretation? Like, will it be successful if we catch the needs of students who otherwise hadn't been identified? Or is it successful if it's really well aligned with what we've already been doing and the students that we had known needed services?
So my opinion is, if it helps any children at all, it is successful. However, for data-wise, we're gonna have the students who participated in the screener, who participated in interventions, reassess themselves with the screener again in the spring to see if their ratings improve.
Also, we're going to rely heavily on our counselors as well. The counselors know who our frequent flyers are. There are a lot of students, I can speak for the middle school, who just come to seek counselors for a few minutes. Some come every single day. They obviously need something. They're not always able to articulate what it is that they need. But we will be in communication with our counselors to talk about, you know, are you seeing that student as frequently? Is that student coming regularly? That data as well as the screener, because of course a self-screen, you know, sometimes students may be guarded or they may not fully tell you how they're feeling, but their behavior will also be used as data to support whether things are getting better or not.
I have a question on that point. I mean, what landed us at the December screener? Because I am thinking about those students who are a little bit guarded, maybe looking at this survey with a little bit of skepticism. And I know that, I believe what you said is the one that you're recommending would also have a teacher screener?
There's a teacher option to it. We want to start with the self-screener with the students, but there is a teacher option.
So what does that mean?
Meaning that if we, depending on how this year goes, or if there are students who are not able to, for some reason, to do their own screener, we would give permission to have a teacher screen as well to see if there's behaviors that are standing out that we need to intervene. And we would still do the same thing, ask permission and go through the same process if a teacher were to fill it out.
Okay, so I think that's an important point that I didn't quite get across. That for this round and what the proposal is that it will only be a self-screen this year.
This round. Unless the student is not able to do their own, then we would use a teacher. But the idea is to do a self-screen, yes.
Okay, and so that's really then, seems like we're trying to reach students who are otherwise not okay with asking for help, but maybe feel like they do need some help.
Yes.
And this gives them maybe a different avenue for seeking that help themselves, where they're not, affirmatively like stopping by in the guidance counselor's office or something like that.
Yes, exactly. And you mentioned in the beginning of your statement about we're doing it in December, and all the screeners do suggest that you wait a little while, not right at the beginning of a school year, because students are just adjusting and getting used to, their teachers, their peers and things like that. So you don't want to do it in September or, right away. So we think that at that point, they may have a better sense of how they feel about school at that point.
Yeah, and that was actually my concern too, is that maybe it's a little bit too early, because I think I don't have marking period grades yet for my child, and they're in elementary school, but so I'm just wondering if that's a little bit too early, if they truly feel like they're integrated, or maybe obviously not integrated and that's the problem, or if there's some sort of data that shows that doing it later would actually be more beneficial, since these are such transition years. I can see a scenario where at the end of this year, they really feel like, wow, I went through this whole school year and I'm supposed to be transitioning into this new great time, and it's not working out like that for me.
And I understand what you're saying. All I can say is that the screeners themselves suggest late October. Okay. So they actually suggested earlier. So we're later than what they actually suggested, just to give more time and to make sure that we're doing it, with fidelity. We want to make sure we're doing it right. So we didn't want to rush it. But the screener itself actually recommend late October. So I think the idea is so you have enough time to do the interventions, because obviously if you wait too long in the year, you won't have enough time to really give good interventions. But I think with students, you just sometimes don't know which way it's going to go. There are some who it may be too early for, and then some, need less time and they give good information. So.
Thanks. And then I just had one more question, and it was on sort of the optics of this, but the student optics of it. I hope we're not calling it an intervention class, right? And so, I'm just wondering sort of how is this going to be referred within the schools so that students don't feel like they're being singled out in a bad way, and sort of what's the plan around the messaging, between the students?
So the licensed professional counselor would work with the teacher and the students to develop a plan for when that child would come down, and our hope would be it would be time where they're not, being pulled out of a class and in front of other children. It would be at a transition time, and they do a wonderful job of, we're gonna meet together, we're gonna have fun, this is what we're gonna be doing together. So it's never really communicated to the students as a negative.
Okay, thank you.
How many years do we anticipate using this program? Do we have a sense of, we're just going to try it this year? Oh, sorry. Over here. How many years do we anticipate using this program? So it sounds like this year we're going to try it and see how it goes. Is there a sense that we're going to be, every year we're going to do this for the same age groups, or the same
Well,
grades rather?
we would like to do it every year. This is coming from the strategic goals, and the
Okay.
strategic goals are,
Okay.
long-term goals.
Okay,
We want to look at the date at the end of this year to talk about grade levels, timing, and see if there's any improvements we can make, just like we do with any other program.
okay, yeah, I was just, I guess, more trying to figure out, is this just because we have some extra ESSER funding, so we're just gonna do it for 2 or 3 years to coincide with that, or really this is part of the strategic plan that we want to use this, or maybe a different instrument in the future, or whatever?
Yes, this is part of the
Okay,
strategic
that's
plan.
great.
The ESSER funding was a happy bonus.
Sorry, just to jump in, we don't have the contract yet, we haven't been provided that, but is the contract a 1-year contract?
It is.
Okay.
And then the other question, do we have a targeted start date for interventions? Do we have a sense of like, this would be a particularly good time to start?
So we would like to do it within like 2 weeks after the screener being completed. We might not need the full 2 weeks, but we would need the time to group students appropriately,
Okay.
communicate with families,
Okay.
and make sure that we have everything set up so that it runs smoothly.
So there's 3 opportunities of people who would deliver this. The Lakeshore people who are delivering the instrument, our guidance counselors, social skills, we have social skills teachers who might do it.
So this is just the Lakeside counselor will
This
be
is just
intervening. Yes,
Lakeside.
the other things are always in place.
Okay, okay. So we're not taking time away from guidance or whatever else I said. Okay.
One more question, I'm sorry, I just started this as with a couple of my board members' questions. This is available electronically and I guess, in person. Will it be available to Haverford online students?
Yes.
Okay, and if so, I guess, what would the interventions then be? Would they be just brought in, would it be like a Zoom thing, or would
Be a
that be
Zoom
determined?
thing, it's what, we would have to see with what's comfortable for the student.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Other questions from the board? I have a couple of questions then. Can you just maybe walk me through our identification/screening process now?
Sure. Do you want?
No,
Okay.
I didn't hear, I couldn't fully hear
The
the question.
identification/screening process now.
I'm sorry.
She couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Could you just walk me through our identification/screening process now? How do we do this now? How do we do this function now?
Sure. So if there's a concern about a student, either a parent or a teacher will refer the child to the child study team. The team meets, they discuss, what options are available. Maybe the guidance counselor is going to meet with the child one-on-one, or maybe the guidance counselor is going to push into lunch to see what's going on in lunch. We see how that goes before we would make a referral for like special education identification. But it's a parent can refer, or teacher,
Or a child could ask for
or
help?
child could ask for help, yes.
So, and are we seeing a significant increase in demand for this type of support,
I'll let you
given
forward.
the
Yeah.
last 20 months?
Yes, so one of the main reasons why we felt the screener was necessary is because there has definitely been an increase of students needing counselor support, needing partial hospitalization, having at-risk behaviors where they have to, be assessed outside of school. We are working with more psychiatrists and psychologists than ever before. There's just been an increase in the numbers of students who just need more support. And, again, speaking as a school psychologist, I don't want to see every student end up being in special ed because of those challenges. We would like to see some proactive things happening before it gets to that point where they need to now be identified as a student needing special education.
And just so I understand, so all of that has been in place and is in place, and what we're talking about is adding on a layer where in 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade, all students would go through this brief diagnostic process, and hopefully that will help us keep kids from falling through the cracks.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
I was just going to suggest maybe like a public service announcement if there are people who have concerns about their child's social, emotional, how they're dealing with stress or anxiety. Could you just walk through a couple of the recommended people to reach out to or to call, and then maybe also mention about Safe to Say and what kind of resource that is?
Sure. So Safe to Say can be used for any concern about a student's well-being, and our administrative team, get an alert about what is reported to Safe to Say, and we intervene. There's also our guidance counselor, so if a parent was concerned, I would say reach out to your guidance counselor first, and principal next maybe, but our guidance counselors are available. Our guidance counselors can refer children to our school social workers if they think that would be useful. The social workers help support families with different process. They have a lot of information about even outside of school supports as well. So they're a great resource.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's helpful for everyone to hear that message. And it is, it's always reassuring to hear the extent to which the schools have these resources and the counselors and social workers to help kids and families when they need it.
Any other questions from the board? Any other comments from the administration?
Can I, oh, go ahead, you go.
No,
No, you go. I want to move this subject. So, oh, you were, thank you. I just wanted to say that this is a great tool. I don't mean to imply that I don't think it's a great tool. What I really wanted to say, and I wanted to say this to the public, this is my last curriculum committee meeting, and we had a gentleman come to the school board last week and talk about our strategic goals. And I felt like I got from him that maybe we didn't have enough academic goals. And I just wanted to make sure that our audience, our parents know and understand that academic goals go on every day. Teachers have their own academic goals, principals have their own academic goals. Dr. Rushi has her own academic goals. So now that this is our first curriculum meeting that's on television, the first one that I think anybody's ever seen. And we bring it up and we start with social and emotional wellness, which basically tells everyone how very important that is for us and how important it is that we get all of our students back to where we were maybe 2 years ago, or that we move them forward from where they don't want to be. So I'm not intimating that this isn't a great thing. I just want the public to know that I have looked at really large history textbooks. I have discussed biology textbooks that I knew nothing about, but I learned at the end. And we have talked about elementary curriculum. We have talked about reading specialists. So I just want the public to know and understand that this is one very small facet of our curriculum committee. And it's an important one. And I think it's one that we'll have a nice discussion, I believe, at the next board meeting, right? Will we be discussing this? Yeah. So we're not putting it in place yet. We're going to wait till the board meeting. Okay. Thank you.
And Susan, if you don't mind, I'd just like to give a shout out for November 22nd is our next curriculum committee meeting where we will be talking about the high school course selection guide.
You're invited, Susan.
I won't let me go. You just keep pulling me back.
Getting the most we can out of
Thank you.
services.
Susan, once you're off the board, you're welcome to attend the meeting.
Thank you, and I'm sure I will. I'm going to save a seat for myself back there. Absolutely. Rob will save a seat for me.
Well, thank you all very much. We really appreciate your time and the presentation this evening, and we'll look forward to hearing more.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify, we believe that information will come through the venue of a board report from what happened at this evening, right? Yes. Okay,
I took good notes.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is public comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak this evening? Come on down.
So do I need to give my address? 32 East Westwood Park Drive. My name's Helene Comrie Smith. I'm a parent. I'm just concerned because I heard a remark, and I think possibly it was a little off the cuff, about a claim that the Ames Web would be like the Sabres. And I just want to say that that really is not true, or that would be disingenuous to the public. Sabres is collecting personal data on a student via a third-party programming. The best can be done on paper. No one would ever hold that data, and it can be shredded, so it doesn't go through the children's file. You have no control who may access personal information via online systems, even private systems. The Ames Web is specifically about reading and decoding. They also have a math component, which the public does not probably really understand. And truly personal information will remain in the Sabres. So I would like for you guys to consider that and be clear in the wording that you're using. With regards to academics, I'm hearing that you're talking about textbooks and things that you are going through and discussing. It would be very interesting for us to know, like, when was the public able to see that? If you are considering some of these new textbooks, this is supposed to go through your board. It's also to have public access prior to making these decisions, and I'd like to start to see that as well. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak this evening?
Just, thank you, Mrs. Conroy Smith, for those comments. I just wanted to share that we do make sure that whenever a textbook is up for adoption, that it does come to the full public board meeting, and we don't vote on it on the first meeting. We always wait until a second meeting to actually take that vote. So just for information purposes, I wanted to make sure that if folks were interested, that they could learn more about the textbooks through that venue.
Or there's a meeting November 20th.
Right. I don't believe we have any textbooks to propose at the November meeting, but they certainly would come to another curriculum committee meeting if and when that occurs, that we do have a textbook to propose.
Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Okay, do I need a motion to adjourn from a committee meeting, or?
Motion to adjourn?
Susan still moves.
Susan would like to
She's moving.
I'm not moving. I don't even know what to say anymore. I usually don't say it because I say it wrong. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, this Thursday, if you're not getting enough of board meetings and committee meetings, we'll be having our Finance and Facility Committee. We'll be meeting right here, same time, same place. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Gavel.